Welcome to Living Midlife Well, the podcast for people in their 40s and 50s who are done with just getting through the day and ready to start actually living it. I'm Janine Lattimore, and I'm so glad you're here. Today's episode is a personal one. In fact, it's one of the most honest and vulnerable things I've shared out loud. I'm going to talk about what it really looks and feels like to hit your 40s and have everything fall apart. Not the glossy, reframed version, but the raw, messy, what on earth is happening truth of it. And then I want to offer you something to help make your transition through midlife a little easier, with 3 ways to turn unraveling into understanding. So if you're in your 40s and life feels less like the plan you had and more like a pile of rubble you're standing in, this episode is for you. Make yourself comfortable because this may trigger a few things for you. At 43, I was penniless, alone, sick, and on a welfare benefit. My second marriage had just ended. My body was staging a full rebellion against me, and I was supposed to be a motivational teacher, someone who helped people build happy, meaningful lives. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was drowning in shame, held together by nothing much at all, and wondering how on earth I had ended up here. Let me take you back to where it all began to unravel, because it didn't happen overnight. It was a slow accumulation of everything until the weight of it became impossible to carry. In my early 40s, I felt trapped in my life. I had developed severe multiple chemical intolerance and was experiencing sometimes debilitating symptoms where my joints swelled painfully, my energy disappeared, my skin came out in burning, itching rashes, and my brain would melt into fog or be hijacked by anxiety. I felt like I had very little time or energy to do the things I wanted to do, or even to have any space for myself. My second marriage was struggling under the weight of stress that we had been and were experiencing. It felt like life had run my husband and I over and spat us out on opposite sides of the road. I thought that I had got it right the second time around, but unexpectedly and painfully, marriage number 2 came to an end. Here is what led up to that. I had my son when I was 38, and he was born with digestive conditions that meant he wailed in pain every time I tried to breastfeed him, and he couldn't sleep lying down. We eventually got him put on a special formula, but not before I looked like I was anorexic from being too scared to eat anything in case it was what was causing the problem for him. He still didn't sleep for more than an hour or 2 at a time until he was about 2. Then my father had a stroke, and I had to help care for him because my only sibling lived overseas, and my mother had died when I was 32. I was also trying to help care for my goddaughter who had abuse issues in her home life, and then she started running away and I would spend days searching for her. In the midst of all that, I began to realize that I was carrying a truckload of fear and guilt, and at my core, I hated myself. I also knew that my lack of self-love and acceptance had played a big part in my relationship issues. I felt stuck, exhausted, bound, depressed, and like I had been waiting for someone to save me who never came. Alongside all of the external chaos, there was an internal story running, a shame story, one that made everything harder to bear and much harder to move through. By midlife, some people have made it, achieved their goals of career, family, and financial success. However, I think that more of us get to midlife and think, this is not where I had imagined, expected, or wanted to be at this point in my life. For me, I had dreamed of being a happily married, successful motivational speaker, inspiring and helping thousands of people. The reality, at 43, I had experienced 2 failed marriages, and I was penniless, alone, sick, and on a welfare benefit. I felt broken. I felt fucked up. And I felt like an imposter every time I tried to write or speak about personal growth, health, and happiness. It wasn't just the challenge of the circumstances I was experiencing, it was the shame story I attached to them. So how do we get here? How does life end up looking so different from the one we imagined? I want to reframe what we typically call a midlife crisis because I think most of us have a very limited image of what it is. Looking back, I can see that what I experienced was a form of midlife crisis. The usual image of a midlife crisis is a man, sorry, I don't mean to be sexist, but it is normally a man, trying to recover his youth by buying a sports car or a motorbike and dating a woman in her 20s. I think it often looks different to this stereotype, though. That is just one response to the buildup of stress and obligation we experience by midlife, and to the identity questioning that is a common part of realizing that half your life is over and you don't want to keep living your life the same way. For a lot of us, that involves ruminating on all the mistakes and bad patterns we have lived so far, feeling like a failure, and feeling broken or crushed by life. But here's the thing I most want you to hear, and I need you to really let this land. Whatever your circumstances, whatever your shame story, whatever your version of falling apart looks like, there is nothing wrong with you. Let me say that again. There is nothing wrong with you. The end of my second marriage and equal shared custody provided me with both a stimulus and time opportunity to begin doing some deep personal growth work. The first affirmation, or rather healing statement, that I made on my journey to loving myself was, "There is nothing wrong with me and I don't need to be fixed." I knew the soul truth of it, but it still felt hard to say, and especially to say it out loud to anyone else because I feared how they would judge me. It wasn't until several years later that I realized I had been using what I perceived as my brokenness as evidence that I deserved to be loved. It was like I'd been carrying around two suitcases my whole life. In one was all the painful things that had been done to me, which I used as all the reasons I deserved to be loved. This was the one that I would open up and show to people to try and get them to love me. And the other suitcase was all the things that I had done that I felt guilty or ashamed of. That one carried all the reasons I thought I didn't deserve to be loved, and I kept it shut. The uncomfortable truth that came to me was that I didn't feel my own worthiness, so I played the small, nice victim to try and get love. Only it wasn't love, it was sympathy and attention. That first affirmation started an evolution in me, but it took many years of unraveling and learning for me to know in my whole being that I was not broken and that I was worthy of love for all of who I am. As I was reflecting on my story and writing this episode, I came to understand the Japanese art of kintsugi in a new way. Kintsugi is an ancient Japanese practice of repairing broken pottery by mending cracks with lacquer mixed with gold, silver, or platinum. This highlights the scars as the beauty of imperfection and makes the repaired piece even more unique and valuable. I've always thought it was a beautiful concept, but in writing this, it resonated with me deeply and personally. We can feel like we are falling apart in our 40s and that we have been smashed by life. And we can put the pieces back together with golden love to create something more honest. A self where the cracks and imperfections are visible but accepted. And in that, somehow, a self that is more whole. For most people, your 40s are a pivot point in life and an unraveling. Your 40 and falling apart may look like being stuck on an exhausting daily grind treadmill, buried under the weight of the many different hats you wear and the invisible load you carry. It may look like a silent inner scream or maybe a full physical meltdown of, "What about me? It isn't fair. I've had enough. Now I want my share." For all of us, within that unwinding is a cry of, "I want to fully live. I want to be free. I want to be me. I want to matter. And I want to be happy." You are not broken. You are reforming. Let the masks you have worn for so long shatter, and from the pieces form your own gold-threaded artwork. You may be thinking, that sounds nice, But how do I actually do that? It can be very hard to see how you can put the pieces back together when you are in the midst of the breaking and the losing. Let me share 3 key things that helped me make it through all of my experience of falling apart. These all hinge on the understanding that unraveling can also mean deciphering or figuring out. They are different tools to help you gain information and clarity from your experience that you can then use to move forward in ways that are more authentic to who you really are and creating the life that you want to live. Number 1, feel the feels. Acknowledge your feelings and let them flow through you. Be completely honest with yourself and let it be okay to feel whatever you are feeling. Interact with your feelings as if you were the parent and they were your child. Blocking or suppressing your feelings is like self-abandoning a part of yourself. It also traps the emotional energy within your body, which can lead to tension, stress, and low energy levels. Number 2, develop a growth mindset. I did a lot of experimenting and risk-taking in my 40s. A growth mindset approaches life like an experiment where you try different options and however something works out, it provides information. In this, there is no failure, only learning. From each experience, I would ask, what can I learn from this? And what is this showing me about what I do want? Then I would focus on how I could create more of what I wanted. Number 3, make friends with fear. As Frank Herbert wrote in June, fear is the mind killer. Fear causes a stress response in your body and makes it difficult to creatively problem solve or to even think logically sometimes. I found it very helpful to understand that fear comes from my subconscious mind trying to keep me safe. Now I think of it like a very diligent, overly cautious security guard warning me when my body feels unsafe. I acknowledge the warning and then I decide how I will respond to it. I want to share something I wrote in my book, The Great Life Planner, that captures this perfectly. Fearful and limiting thoughts and feelings are not truths. They are purely thoughts and feelings, and are usually based on things you have been taught or experienced in the past. They are connected to old subconscious programming. Celebrate when they come up because it means the unconscious has become conscious, and awareness of them gives you a choice. They are not a sign that anything is going wrong. They are simply an element of being human. Breaking points are often the stimulus for breakthroughs and powerful turning points. I won't pretend my falling apart was graceful or quick, or that there was a single golden moment where everything clicked into place. It was messy and slow, and sometimes I had to find my footing in the dark. But here's what I know now on the other side of it. The unraveling wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of the truest version of it. Your 40s aren't asking you to hold it all together. They're asking you to finally put down what was never really yours to carry and to discover who you are when you stop performing okayness for everyone around you. You are not broken, you are becoming. And that, even when it hurts, is something worth showing up for. As we come to the end of this episode, I have just one thing for you this week. A simple but meaningful action you can take right now to start working with what we've talked about today. My just one thing action point for you this week is a reflection practice. Give yourself some quiet space to consider this series of 5 questions. I recommend handwriting your responses on paper or in a journal or notebook. The process of handwriting enhances the way that you process this with your mind and your body. This practice is something you can repeat anytime you are facing a challenge. Here are the 5 questions. You might want to pause here and grab a pen and paper. Number 1, where do I feel stuck, frustrated, or out of alignment in my current life experience? 2, what am I feeling in connection to that? That's your feel the feels practice. 3, What do I need to feel safe and secure in relation to this? That's your make friends with fear practice. 4. What information can I receive from this experience? That's your growth mindset practice. And 5, what do I want moving forward? Take your time with those. There's no rush. Let the answers come honestly. I'd love to hear from you. What is or was your experience of your 40s? And if you gave the just one thing reflection practice a go, how was it for you? Share in the comments or email me at support@JanineLattimore.com. I genuinely read everything you send. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone in your life who might need to hear it today. And if you haven't already, subscribe so you never miss an episode of Living Midlife Well. Thanks for listening to this episode. If you found it interesting or helpful, then please remember to like and subscribe and leave a comment or review. This supports me and also helps other people find this information and benefit from it. Thank you for being part of the Living Midlife Well community. Aroha nui, much love, and I look forward to connecting again on the next episode. Bye for now.